From the Alex Trebek stage at Sony Picture Studios, this is Inside Jeopardy!
Wow. Hello, I got caught up in the music there, and welcome back to Inside Jeopardy, your exclusive and official podcast destination for all things happening in the world of Jeopardy. I'm Sarah Foss, and I'm joined remotely by the one and only Sam Bring It Buttry.
Yeah, coming to you live from the Inside Jeopardy remote studio. I'm located at the world's biggest airport by area, clocking in at 300 square miles, the size of New York's 5 boroughs. I'm in Dammam, Saudi Arabia.
Wow. Have you actually ever been there, Sam?
No, and in fact, it's not a very busy airport. It's only the third busiest airport in Saudi Arabia. It's just a converted Air Force base that happens to be enormous.
Wow. Well, welcome. We are not joined today by the one and only Michael Davies, but I do want to acknowledge it's March 3rd, which means it's Michael's birthday.
Yes.
So, it's a good thing he's taking the day off because he's a busy man, and I'm sure he's actually not taking the day off, but he's off from the pod today.
Happy birthday, Michael Davies.
Happy birthday, Michael Davies. We both have March birthdays, but he kicks it off on March 3rd, and we end it, with Jeopardy's birthday on March 30th. So really, all the best birthdays are happening in March.
It's not too soon to go down to the drugstore and get those Happy Jeopardy cards.
Right? Get those. You need those. Well, in the world of Jeopardy airtime, this week, or maybe it's Jeopardy S time, like Jeopardy streaming time, JST, I don't even know. But this week, the finals of Pop Culture Jeopardy will be streaming on Wednesday. I don't want to reveal who's in the finals just in case you're still getting caught up. I don't want to give those spoilers because it's a new world when things are streaming. People have different cadences with which they're watching, but I can tell you it's an excellent final. So if you're behind, catch up. If you're with us, watch this Wednesday, and we will finally know who our first ever Pop Culture Jeopardy champions will be.
Pop Culture Jeopardy now streaming on Prime Video.
Yeah, and I don't know if you had a chance to see the trophy, Sam, but it is giant. This was our first team competition where a trophy was going to be awarded, and so we knew it had to be big. It had to match the bigness of pop culture, and let me tell you, it does not disappoint. It's about yay high. So that will be going to our champions now that it will be out in the world that they did, in fact, win.
Do you ship it to their homes, or do they have to drag it home in their carry-on bag?
Well, that's the thing about these trophies we've learned over the years, Sam. You can't send them home with the contestants because then it's a little bit of a spoiler as to who won because you're coming home with a trophy.
Very good.
So even in the past with Masters and James and Victoria, we send those after the fact, after the airing. So we will be shipping the trophy. It's just one large trophy. So we did talk about how they're going to share it. It's going to have different times where it lives at each of their residences.
Precisely 4 months each until one of them gets mad at the other two, and then we'll see what happens.
Then we'll see what happens. Also in JAT, it is the JIT, the JIT. Wow, we really have gone too far with this. And just last week, we saw the return of Amy Schneider. She did not advance into the semifinals, but she will be here on the pod to talk with you and me, Sam. I'm very excited for that interview. Obviously, you've had some run-ins with Amy on the Alex Trebek stage.
I have. She's a lot of fun to play against, but she's also a lot of fun to hang out with. And in fact, we texted today. We text from time to time. And I'll be talking about one of the subjects of that text when Amy joins us a little bit later.
Okay. Yeah. One of the things I really want to ask her about is just, being in Jeopardy shape and what that takes. And, Amy's had a lot of different versions of her life over the past few years. And I think times when she's been able to focus on that more sometimes than others. So we're going to ask her all about that and whatever else you have to talk about, Sam, that will be good. And we've talked about it before. Ken will be the Grand Marshal of the National Cherry Blossom Festival Parade in Washington, D.C. on April 13th. That was actually announced officially last week. There's a big press conference, Sam, to find out when the peak bloom will take place. This is huge. I was live streaming. I was glued to my computer to find out when it would be. Ken actually presented a Final Jeopardy style clue, and then a member of the Park Service announced. Do you want to have a guess? It's a 3-day window. Do you know when it will be, Sam?
I didn't know that it was a 3-day window, and I watched the Final Jeopardy clue being presented by Ken on Instagram before I saw the correct response. So I guessed April the 1st. I was off by just a little bit, and now apparently, because I bet it all, as I always do, apparently I owe Ken Jennings $10,000, but he is not going to get it.
Yeah, he's not going to get it,
No.
But we now have the response that we needed, which is what is March 28th, to March 31st. Right during Jeopardy is going to be the peak bloom. It's all aligning right here at the end of March at the Cherry Festival. Woohoo!
Well, Jeopardy brings out flowers all over the world, Sarah, but especially apparently in our nation's capital. And speaking of national news, there was an article in last week's New York Times about progress in getting streaming rights for Jeopardy. What can you tell the folks at home about that?
Well, this is really exciting. For the first time ever in the upcoming fall season, Jeopardy is going to be streamed. Next day streaming will be available. So obviously we'll still rely on our hundreds of affiliates to get that show on every morning, afternoon, or evening, depending on when you live or where you live. But it will have next day streaming available. So they've had a lot of meetings. The pitches, if you will, are out. The offers are coming in. We don't know where it will live at its new home, but really excited to be able to offer the show to those who don't have a traditional access to broadcast television. And, you know, with what we've seen from pop culture and how incredibly popular it is and how many people, not just existing Jeopardy viewers, but how many new viewers are tuning in for Pop Culture Jeopardy, millennials in particular. There's just an audience out there that is just starting to find Jeopardy, believe it or not, after 41 seasons. So I think this will allow us to continue to reach people that will love the show. They just currently don't have a way to watch it. Yeah,
I'm very excited about Jeopardy bringing in if I may say, a slightly younger audience, college kids and young people who might not have traditional broadcast TV. The article seemed to suggest that this might be starting in the fall, in September. Does that sound right?
That does sound right. Yeah, our new season will debut on September 8th, 2025. So therefore, the streaming can happen as of September 9th.
This is exciting. I will probably watch it as soon as it comes out because I'm a Jeopardy desperado. But the ability to stream it the next day will also be cool.
Yeah, and we also had some incredible ratings. We just received word back for the last week of the Tournament of Champions. Those ratings are in number one across the board, our highest ratings of the season. So obviously people are loving the TOC. I can't imagine what the ratings are going to be like for the JIT. But let's talk about the JIT because we had some very exciting games last week. Heading into Monday, we kicked off the week with our 6th JIT quarterfinal. That matchup featuring Avi Gupta, Amy Schneider, and Luigi de Guzman. This was a great game by all three players. Amy found the first daily double in Double Jeopardy, added 5,000 to her score, but then Luigi worked his way into the lead and maintained that lead heading into final. In that round, Avi and Amy still in contention. 5-digit scores for all three of our players. Love to see it, but it was a triple stumper. So Luigi made that minimal wager, and it allowed him to take the win and head into the semis.
A beautifully played game, as you say, by all three players. I love to see three players over 10,000, as we often do in these great tournaments. Luigi was just on fire with 49 attempts on the buzzer and 61% buzzer accuracy. So he had a total of 27 correct responses against Avi and Amy. Very impressive game by Luigi.
In this show, we had a category featuring the cast of Severance. Obviously, Severance 2, the biggest Apple TV Plus show they've ever seen, even exceeding Ted Lasso at this point, which is pretty impressive. I loved getting the chance to meet the cast and do this very cool category with them, talking about, situations in literature that kind of relate to what happens on the show. Luigi said, and I'm sure you can relate to this, Sam, he didn't even really remember the Severance category until he saw it promoted in social media this past week, as opposed to when he actually played the game, because you're just kind of in that state where you don't really remember what happened.
Yeah, sometimes you go back, if I can speak of my own experience, you go back and watch games that you were in and you don't remember clues that you got right or clues at all maybe. Luigi also talked about another thing I could relate to, which was competing in the final game of the tape day. And the green room starts off crowded, but players leave 3 at a time. And he said, he wrote on Reddit, until by the end it was just Avi, Amy, and me. And the last thing I remember was muttering, "Morituri te salutamos." We who are about to die salute you, which is what the gladiators said at the Colosseum, apparently, as I mounted the stage. And after that, total blackout. And I know what he's talking about. In my JIT, I played in the 9th of 9 semifinals, and I spent a mildly uncomfortable hour in the green room with Colby and Lily, the players I had to go up against in that, and 1 or 2 members of Jeopardy staff just watching Jeopardy and breathing deeply and trying not to panic. It's a stressful situation.
Yeah, I don't understand it, but I can certainly relate to it. Luigi also said, responding to a comment on Reddit about Amy having an easy path to the TOC and to JIT. Let's get one thing straight. Amy is without a doubt one of the greatest ever to play the game. If her path at any time looks easy, it's because she consistently finds ways to play well. As it was, she played a hell of a game here, and I feel very fortunate to have come away with a result.
Right. So it's never a good idea to bet against Amy Schneider in Jeopardy. And, you realize when you look at the last TOC and the opening rounds of this JIT that roughly 2/3 of all these great players have to lose in the first round. We saw it in the TOC where Ray Lalonde lost in the first round, and so did Chris Pannulo. And we've seen it here as well. Great players are up against great players. And yeah, you have to respect Amy for all that she's done. She's a heck of a player.
Well, let's hear how Luigi was feeling after pulling off a win in the quarterfinals.
Luigi, congratulations.
Thanks, Ken.
Everybody was thinking Faulkner.
I mean, I knew it felt wrong, but it was like, okay, put something down. And then I was like, Army 1917,
Right.
Yeah, so.
It could have been Hemingway. So it could have come down to whoever got that right. But Luigi, you got away with one. Congratulations.
I mean, I had no clue. All I saw was it's in the South. Who can you pick
Right.
for in the South? The in the South. And I was like, oh, let's go with Faulkner and see what happens.
Well, you had a big lead at that point, which is what got you here. 49 attempts in that game, fantastic. And you were really locked in on the buzzer. Amy had 44 attempts as well. You were trying, but Luigi was making it very tough to get in, right?
Yeah. And I will say, I'm all warmed up now, so if we can start the real game.
Best out of three?
Yeah.
We've never done this before, but okay, let's run it back. What's your secret there, Luigi?
Vibes, Ken.
It's all vibes.
Vibes.
I loved that moment where you got Bobo, the Bohemian Bourgeois, because I saw you and Amy, it struck you at the same time, and that was a $4,000 swing that you were able to get in there.
The funny thing was, I was like, Bobo, and I was like, what was that thing in the New York? It was like Bobo's in Paradise, right? That was the New Yorker thing, and I was like,
so.
oh, it's that.
Yeah, I mean, I really should have trusted myself. I knew Bohemians and just rung in and trusted that I could get it in the 5 seconds, because I bet I would have, but so it goes.
That is kind of the Jeopardy thing. I'm just going to let my thumb bet on my brain here and see what happens. But that was a great game. Impressive from all three of you. Always a pleasure to see you. And Luigi, you're in the semifinals. Congratulations, buddy.
You.
We'll see you then.
So many of these games just come down to one clue, one daily double, one final Jeopardy clue. Very exciting stuff. But moving on to Tuesday's game with Ray Lalonde, Robin Carroll, and Ryan Long, or as Ken called them, the 3 Rs. Robin took a small lead into Double Jeopardy, where Ray found both daily doubles to add $7,000 to his score for the lead heading into final. Another triple stumper, and it was Ray who secured the win.
Well, this was Ray's 16th game that he's ever played on the Alex Trebek stage, if you include all the ones leading up to this. And after the game, he said, JIT feels like a victory lap. It's like having a once-in-a-lifetime event happen 16 times. So gotta love that. Juveria wrote on Reddit, as the president of the Ray Lalonde fan club, I approve this outcome. Luigi chimed in to say, I just need to tell you guys that however marvelously chill you think Ray is, he's even better in person.
He really is a very fine guy. I will say they all whiffed on one clue. This game featured a clue about Love Island. It was a triple stumper, and Ken joked, I can't believe none of you brilliant people watched Love Island.
I know. Do you watch it, Sam?
I have not yet seen it.
Me either.
Okay, good.
Well, heading into Wednesday's game now with Ben Chan, Claire Sattler, and Shane Whitlock. This was a close game between Ben and Shane, with Shane taking an early lead in the game, but then Ben caught fire in Double Jeopardy and entered final with the lead. But then Ben was incorrect and Shane was correct for an exciting come from behind win.
You never know what's going to happen in Jeopardy. And I did love that Ken opened the show by saying, today we have with us the full Jeopardy life cycle, a teen tournament champion in Claire, a college champion in Shane, and a tournament of champions runner-up in Ben. He felt like he was about to call him a TOC champion and backed off just a little. But of course, Ben is also a legend in this game.
Yes. And, you know, it was fun to see Shane. Obviously, he hasn't been on the Alex Trebek stage in many, many years. Very active in the trivia world, certainly competing against Victoria and the likes of those legends who've proven themselves. And obviously, he's good. He's strong. And this game went to him against some tough competition. Claire, never really able to get her footing. She spent a lot of the Double Jeopardy round in the red. She was able to get back to 0, but then Shane beat her on the last clue, and so she wasn't able to make it to final. And, you know, I think everyone who's watching thinks, come on, Shane, why didn't you let her have that clue? But he said right after, I'm so sorry. I really wasn't aware of the scores. And I know, Sam, you can relate. You're in that game. If he knew for 1 second that by holding off on the buzzer, it would allow someone else to play final, he absolutely would.
Yeah, you would, but there's just no way to consider that, I think. And you have to feel bad for Claire. I went back and watched this game. I was in the studio when this game was recorded, but of course I went back and watched it, and I tried to keep track in my head of the number of times Claire appeared to be buzzing, and it was quite a lot. So, she's obviously a capable player, just didn't get it going today. Or on that day. But she did give out her plea that she would like to be a writer for SNL in case Colin was watching. As a comedian and a scientific researcher of some sort, an unusual combination. But anyway, on Thursday, we saw a great game among Seth Wilson, Jackson Jones, and Juveria Zahir. Jackson took a small lead into Double Jeopardy, and there, Seth unfortunately dropped to 0 on the first Daily Double, but he managed to work his way back into contention. Juveria then went all in on the last Daily Double and was correct to take the lead into final, but with Jackson and Seth in striking distance. All 3 players were correct in final, and Juveria secured the win and the last spot in the semifinals.
Great win for Juveria, and we learned that she has a fan in Drew Goins. He was actually down in Mexico, and actually in Mexico City, he apparently ran into Mark Fitzpatrick. There's a photo of them online. We're going to show it because they were hanging out, cheering on Juveria, and then he also photoshopped a photo where he was kind of coming out of Juveria's forehead. He's in the photo, and he said, "Fun fact, I sprang fully formed from the forehead of Juveria, my Jeopardy mother."
For those of you that don't get the reference, that's apparently referring to Athena springing from the forehead of Zeus, fully clad in her armor. And I'm happy to say that Drew in the picture is fully dressed as well.
Let's actually listen to what Juveria was feeling after that big win.
Juveria, congratulations.
Thank you.
You have a big cheering section here.
People say in your 40s you can't make new friends, but I have made the most wonderful new friends in this journey. And I have a husband too, who is also.
This is from your post-Jeopardy life, is that right? This is your Jeopardy cheering section?
Tournament play. I know it's divisive, but you make so many new friends.
Last time you were here in the Tournament of Champions, you, in some ways in that final game, I feel like you were kind of outplaying Luigi, but he got you in final.
Can you tell him that? No, he
hit the stats.
He played a beautiful game, and he did everything he needed to do. He doubled up twice, and he knew final, and I didn't. Luigi loves trains, and I knew he was going to get it, and you saw what an incredible player he is.
We have. He's going to be in the semifinals as well. Are you thinking about the possibility of a possible rematch?
I never want to see Luigi out here ever again. But if we both make the final, I will be so nice to him then, but I don't want to see him before that.
We'll see what happens in the semi or even the finals. Who knows? Best of luck to you, and thanks. It was great to see you guys. Great game.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah, we'll see what happened, but right now we're heading back to Friday, where we closed out the week with our first semifinal game between Roger Craig, Jaskaran Singh, and Shane Whitlock. All 3 players were tied heading into Double Jeopardy, where Roger worked to take the lead. In the Double Jeopardy round, Jaskaran and Shane both responded incorrectly to Daily Doubles, which allowed Roger to just further extend his lead heading into final. However, Jaskaran's still in contention. All 3 players, though, correct in final, and Roger gets the win in the JIT, and he's headed to the finals. Our first finalist.
Our first finalist of 3. It's very exciting. I will say that Ken spoke with Shane about his true Daily Double there that Shane wasn't able to come up with. And Ken said, I think it was the right call. And Shane said, I think so, too. I don't regret it at all. It didn't go my way, but against these guys, I needed to make a strong move and try to put myself in a better position for Final Jeopardy. And I 100% agree. Shane is so good at Jeopardy. It's the right move. And, things don't always go your way, but good for him.
Yeah, Ken also joked that Roger had the amazing strategy of not finding a daily double in that game. And Roger said, yeah, it just turned out well. He said the game went by in like 5 minutes for me. And so I think, especially when the daily doubles are hard, you are kind of glad maybe that you didn't have one of those, because it really did cause a big shift in this game.
Probably only in retrospect. I expect everybody wants the daily doubles, but then when you see a tough one go by, you're like, oh man, glad I didn't get that.
Yeah. And now a quick word from our sponsor. When you think about businesses that are selling through the roof like Aloe or Allbirds, you probably think about a great product and brilliant marketing. But an often overlooked secret is actually the businesses behind the business making selling, and for shoppers buying, simple. For millions of businesses, that business is Shopify, home of the #1 checkout on the planet. Nobody does selling better than Shopify. And the not-so-secret, Shopify uses Shop Pay that boosts conversions up to 50%. Businesses that want to grow with Shopify. So upgrade your business and get the same checkout Aloe and Allbirds use. Sign up for your $1 per month trial period at shopify.com/Jeopardy, all lowercase. Go to shopify.com/Jeopardy to upgrade your selling today. Shopify.com/Jeopardy. And now, back to Inside Jeopardy! Well, last Wednesday, we saw the return of Celebrity Jeopardy!, the quarterfinals. We had taken 1 week off for a repeat, but we were back with new episodes. Anna Navarro, Dave Friedberg, Yvette Nicole Brown. Dave took the lead heading into Triple Jeopardy! With the help of a $6,400 true daily double. In Triple, Yvette was working close to close the gap on Dave, but he just maintained a narrow lead heading into final. Here, it was a triple stumper. Dave gets the win, but both Anna or Yvette could have defeated him if they had made the small wager. I don't think that going into Celebrity Jeopardy, there's a lot of things I think our celebrities are thinking about, probably not wagering strategy, but in this case, one of them could have come up with the win against Dave.
Yeah, very good game by all three players, I thought. And it is a thing that I had to learn, certainly. Final Jeopardy wagering strategy is a thing you can learn about. And I don't fault our players for not getting that. I did want to say Yvette Nicole Brown is apparently a huge fan of the show and has been watching her whole life, with a shout out to her college sorority where she watched. She was a lot of fun to watch because she's so, funny and bubbly. And I think of her in her roles like in Community. But she was a serious force up there and came from way behind in Triple Jeopardy to get very close to Dave's score.
Yeah, and Anna Navarro has played this game before. She played in Washington years ago in our Power Players. Her trick this time, her secret to success, Cha-Cha. Her dog, adorable little dog, came with her everywhere. We recorded some clues with her. Cha-Cha was there. We posted it on our social. If you didn't have a chance to see Cha-Cha, you need to make your day a little better. Go look at Cha-Cha. You won't want to miss it.
Cha-Cha got a front row seat. Who do I have to call to get a front row seat, Sarah?
I think Cha-Cha was in your seat, actually, Sam, because you weren't there that day. But I think Cha-Cha was exactly where you normally sit. Of course, Anna getting $30,000 for her charity, the Maestro Cares Foundation, and Yvette earning $30,000 for her charity, Donors Choose. All right, that's it for Celebrity Jeopardy! But we have our very own homegrown celebrity right here, Sam Buttrey, here to present our favorite segment. But wait, there's more. What do you have for us this week, Sam?
This week's clue comes from Wednesday's show, so bring it.
Come out and play 1,000.
Speeds can reach 150 miles per hour in this fast-paced sport. Merry Festival in Basque. Shane.
What is Jai-Alai?
Jai-Alai is correct, and you're off to a great start, Shane.
Yeah, so Jai-Alai originated in the Basque region of Spain, as Ken says. Although it was introduced to the U.S. in the early 1900s, apparently, the game became popular in the 70s and 80s because it was legal to gamble on, and they had Jai-Alai frontons in places like Rhode Island and Connecticut, although now it's no longer as popular. So anyway, players use a long curved basket attached to the hand to hurl a ball off walls to score points. It's a little like racquetball, but there are only 3 walls, the front one, the back one, and then one that's on your left as you face front. This gives the spectators seated at the open right side an excellent view, but it also means you may not play Jai-Alai left-handed. Even if you're a lefty, the basket, the cesta, has to stay on your right hand. And there are only a couple of other sports that require you to play right-handed. And I happen to know that you, Sarah, are left-handed.
That is true, Sam. How do you know this?
How do I know this? Because I used to sit in Cha-Cha's seat before I was kicked out for a dog. And so that's, the folks at home may not know that that's behind the judges' table where you sit with the head writers and so on. And on those rare occasions when Ken makes a bobble, he might slightly mispronounce something or stutter ever so slightly. You, Sarah, make a note with your left hand on something that might be a grid of the clues or something like that. I don't know if other people are doing that as well, but I assume that's to do those pickups afterwards where folks at home may not know that Ken then re-records those clues to make sure that he gets everything precisely right. So I watched you do that, deduced that that's what you were doing, and observed, of course, that you're left-handed. Now, if you wanted to play polo, you would need to have the mallet in your right hand because that's another one of those sports that you must play right-handed.
Well, I don't want anyone to get hit with a highlight ball. That I know.
That is true. So the ball is a little bit smaller. It's about 3/4 the size of a baseball. It is harder than a golf ball. And it, as Ken says, it goes up to 150 miles an hour. So that thing could kill you. And of course, the players wear protective gear and helmets and so on. But the Guinness Book of Records describes highlight as the world's fastest moving ball sport.
Isn't every sport with a moving ball sport?
Yeah, you would have thought, but apparently not, and I'll tell you why. This actually sets up two excellent trivia questions, which I'd like to share. And I know you love trivia, Sarah, because you've watched 8,000 of the 10,000 Jeopardies or whatever it is.
Right, but I don't consider it trivia. But yes, go ahead, Sam.
Knowledge, wisdom, maybe. Anyway.
Quizzing.
Okay, so we know that highlight is not in the Olympics. So let's ask the question, in which current Olympic sport does the ball move the fastest? And here I'm not counting ammunition and shotgun shells. I mean balls in sports. So when people hear that question, they think of fast-moving sports like tennis or maybe baseball. But what makes this a good trivia question to me is the unexpected answer. The Olympic sport with the fastest-moving ball is, in fact, golf. So pros routinely drive balls over 165 miles an hour. The fastest drive ever was apparently over 200 miles an hour. And yet golf is not really a moving ball sport, I guess. Every once in a while, though, that thing really moves.
Huh. Interesting. Okay, but you said two trivia questions. Two, Sam. That was just one.
I knew you wouldn't forget, Sarah. So here's a second trivia question. Again, not counting ammunition. In which Olympic sport does a projectile move fastest? So clearly it's not golf because we used that one up. And the answer was totally surprising to me. I learned this during the last Olympics. It's the badminton shuttlecock. That thing has been clocked at well over 200 miles an hour in competition, but under controlled conditions, an Indian player was measured hitting a badminton shuttlecock at, get this, 351 miles an hour. That's ridiculous. That's faster than Amy Schneider on the buzzer.
I see what you did there.
I called back there. That's called a callback in the broadcasting business.
It's a callback, but then it's going to be a call forward because we're going to be talking to her in a few minutes.
I call everywhere.
I love this. Well, thank you for that But Wait segment. And now it's time for Host Chat. An audience member asked Ken, what is the best part of being the host of this show?
I love just being able to hang out here. Like, this was a very happy place for me in 2004. And for most contestants, it's over pretty quick and you don't really get to come back. And this is like my afterlife. It's nice. I love hanging out with the writers who are very smart and funny and going over the material for every day with them. And I love seeing the contestants. You know, it reminds me of being in their shoes and trying to make them, like, I even try to make the interviews watchable. That's how much I care about the contestants. I feel their pain and I want them to have fun.
He feels their pain, Sam. He feels their pain.
Ken knows what it's like to be a player, and I think it comes out in the way he hosts. He's very good at that job.
Well, someone else who knows very well what it's like to be a player is 40-game champion Amy Schneider. Time now to welcome her to the pod.
Hi, thanks.
Well, what was it like last week watching that quarterfinal game?
I mean, it was interesting. It's always, sort of seeing it with some space and from the outside. And, like I'm always so like harsh on myself immediately after a game that doesn't go my way. But then, going back and seeing it, it was just, Luigi was just that good. And there's to an extent nothing you can do. So except tip your cap. Yeah.
Well, a lot of people praising you online and even Luigi himself saying Amy Schneider is the very best there is. He said a prayer practically before that game and was feeling very lucky to come out a winner. I know that you've had so many different things going on in your life over the years since you became a Jeopardy super champion and have been launched into Masters and JID and TOC. And I'm just curious, with different things that are happening, how much you're able to prepare for these types of tournaments and what you felt like your preparation was coming into this one.
I am, to an extent, sort of just preparing in the background like I have been my whole life, just by, watching the show some, and also just learning things all the time, and especially the last few years, paying much more attention to top 40 pop music and all of that sort of thing than I necessarily would if I didn't know Jeopardy was on the horizon. This year it happened to come right after San Francisco Sketch Fest, which is a big comedy festival that I was really a lot more involved in than I had expected. And, so that meant I wasn't quite cramming in the same way that I necessarily have before. That was, a trade-off I was consciously making. But I didn't really think it would make a difference, because I've always kind of been in the philosophy of those things you do in the last few days before taping, they never really end up making a difference. But I think there is something about there's some level of sharpness that I was sort of surprised to not quite feel, that I sort of thought I could turn on. And I didn't realize how much that sort of in the week or two in advance focusing had, I still needed that. Some of those games in the Masters just felt really deflating in a way that this one didn't. I played well and Luigi played better.
I've got a little note here about things we might ask Amy Schneider, but first I want to point out Sketchfest sounds fun. Folks at home may not know that you're also a budding stand-up comedian, because you were nice enough to send me 10 minutes of your routine, which we'll be playing as soon as Jeopardy stops being rated G. Thank you. But so it's obvious that you're keeping busy. Do you set aside specific time to train for Jeopardy, or is it really just trying to assimilate things as the world goes past you?
Mostly assimilating. I mean, I do, when it's coming up, set aside a certain amount of time, just sort of Sporkle quizzes, and I also, I try to assess, where is the difficulty level going to be, with the scale of, regular season Jeopardy running up to Masters, and
you've played it all.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. And so trying to think how likely am I going to need to know, the capital of Cameroon versus, the capital of Spain or whatever, so yeah, I mean, I definitely did set aside some time, and, had it, had things been different, would have set aside slightly more.
Now, Amy, one thing about you, and you commented in the post-game chat about this, is oftentimes you will ring in trusting that in the 5 seconds you have to come up with that response, you will in fact do so. We were talking about one of the clues that both you and Luigi it dawned on you at the same time. Mm-hmm. Were you feeling any more of that hesitation in this game of trusting that you know this, or, just because you hadn't been on the stage for, a little less than a year?
Yeah. Well, I think, again, that's where the, that, 1% of sharpness, that's one of the key areas that I think it shows up, is about knowing when to trust yourself and knowing when not to. And, it's something that you have to, you have to feel it and not know it, because otherwise it's too late if you're rationalizing it. And that's what I can say for certain, that's what I was doing there. I was rationalizing it. I was thinking, well, it's this, should I? And then it was, then that was over.
There's also that fear that, at least I had that fear, that if you buzz in, remember the answer was Bohemian bourgeoisie, something like that, Bohemian bourgeois. If you buzz in and say Bohemian out loud, and then try to wait for the other, you've now given Luigi and Avi a running start. So you don't want to give away anything that isn't necessary to give away.
I have to ask, Amy, when you became a 40-game champion, I remember you saying you can't imagine how Ken went on to win another 34. And now years have passed, and no one's really come close except for in, the months that passed after you had your record of coming close to that. How long do you feel it will stand? I think it's pretty solid at this point.
I mean, yeah, it's really hard to say. I mean, I guess, what I would say is before Matamodio, it seemed like really it would last forever. And then all of a sudden it seemed like sort of potentially in reach in the distance. And now it's faded off again. So, you never really know. it could happen, in 20 years. It could happen next month. Who knows?
They asked Ken this same question. He said, I can think that the record will be broken because the returning champion has what he described as such a big advantage in terms of being accustomed to the stage, being accustomed to the buzzer and the lights and so on. But I also thought you raised a good point, which was, boy, a 34-game streak would be amazing. It would be astounding. And to take your streak and then add a 34-game streak, then you got to win one more. I don't know. It seems like a tall order.
Yeah, the players in the regular season, they obviously don't have the experience, but more and more of them have sort of a lot more understanding, and they're not as they don't, like, compared to 10 years ago. I think that the quality of play is just better.
Amy, it wouldn't be much of a podcast if we didn't let you plug your latest book. Am I right?
That is absolutely correct. Thank you. So I've got a book coming out. It is called Who is Amy Schneider? So yeah, keeping the Jeopardy theme going. And it's actually an adaptation. Yeah, and it's actually an adaptation of my first book, in the form of a question, also still out and available, so look into that. But
which kind of like your comedy set, I believe, is not exactly PG.
That is right.
That is
and
true.
That is, yes. And that is why the new book is out, because this one is PG. It is aimed at younger readers, intended for younger readers. I was sort of disappointed that I felt I had to include some non-PG stuff in the first book. It was what felt right. But I mean, it's so much more fun putting a book out for kids because kids like reading more than adults do for the most part. Like, people grow out of reading. Some people do, and more rarely grow into it. So kids love learning. Like, it's just natural. It's what their job is in life. And so it's really fun to write for them.
What do you think is the ideal age for your reader for this book, Amy? Who are you targeting, would you say?
The publishing category is middle grade.
Okay.
So yeah, which I guess, what does that run? Like,
6 to 8?
Yeah. Maybe a little bit younger, but in that range.
Okay, well then I would ask if I can get a copy once it comes out. Ken Jennings just nicely donated the Junior Genius Guides. My kids did lose their school in the fires. We're rebuilding the library, and I want your book on the shelves, Amy.
Absolutely. Done.
And it's not too early to start thinking about that holiday shopping for you folks at home.
It's true. And kids do love to read. It's wonderful to see. So I love that this book will now be available, and you've certainly had a remarkable journey to share. We're so happy that you continue to be a part of our Jeopardy family. And thanks so much for joining us on the pod, Amy.
Oh, thanks for having me.
Great to see you, Amy.
Always a joy to talk to the one and only Amy Schneider. And I'd love to have your point of view in this interview, Sam. That was great.
That was great. It's always good to see Amy. And it's delightful when you see Jeopardy people and you learn a little bit about their outside Jeopardy experiences as well. So Amy, of course, involved in comedy, involved in writing. This is, of course, her second book now. But it's also fun to hear about how they prepare for Jeopardy mentally and physically. And, I think she was right. She played a strong game against difficult opponents. And it was very entertaining to watch.
Well, I'm sure this is not the last time we will see Amy Schneider on the Alex Trebek stage. Her new book, Who is Amy Schneider? The more child-appropriate version comes out tomorrow, March 4th. And believe it or not, Sam, that is the end of this week's Inside Jeopardy! We're going to see you next week back here, we hope, and we'll talk all about JIT. It's going to be a great week of shows. See you next week.
We're so glad you're here. Stick around and click that subscribe button so you see all our latest videos.